So probably something I've been asked more than anyone when it comes to advertising my school and in terms of a YouTube channel is, why animal spirit? What's with that? Well, what it is it's referencing a certain part of the process by which I train my students. There are various ways to describe it. I'll describe it in the physical. What I do basically is when I'm training my students, so let's say I have a fresh student in and they're at novice level, right? No belts, no nothing, just a novice. What I do is as I start training them, I'll look out for their physical characteristics, the techniques they're more likely to go for, how they're more likely to move, etc. Then, once I've done that, once they get to the intermediate level, the level of apprentice, I will then give them a belt and say, here is this animal style, which I think you will go with very well, or which I think will pair with your natural style very well. So it's more of a way to tailor the training to the individual student. I'll give you an example. So, one of my first students, when he came in, he had that more whipping sort of movement in his hands, and so I deduced that he would best fit with snake style, and so he's been moving forwards with that. So to illustrate that point even more, and just because it's a bit of fun, today we're going to take several influences, and we're going to pair them with a specific animal spirit. Let's say they are my students. They come in to my school and say they want to learn from me. So I say, okay, let's train you up a bit, and once you're ready, here are your animals. Here are what I think you would pair with very well. So we're starting off first of all with the man himself, well, a man, Logan Paul. Let's first look at the physical characteristics of Logan Paul. Well, first of all, he's a very big chap. He stands about, 6'2"? Stands at that, very broad-shouldered, very muscular, very much in shape. He has a great background in professional wrestling, currently is in the WWE, and has extensive boxing history of 2 fights that he lost. So physically, he's big and broad, so muscle is certainly something he has. And this has actually led at several points to, outside of the regular orthodox boxing style, that has led to sort of a overpowering sort of movement. The thing which reminds me of this the most is when he was fighting Floyd Mayweather, and there was that one rather famous bit where he started overbearing over Mayweather, really started hammering away at him, like something from Little Mac or something. Or like one of those characters from there, like, I don't know, I can't think of them anymore. Let's say overbearing. Let's say that. It's something to really take note of, and this is more in character than in physical, but because I don't think in terms of the physical he's really been tested in this way, is perseverance. This is a big one. Now in terms of physicality, he hasn't really been tested in this way. It's not as though, sure, he's gone all rounds in a boxing fight, and he has to do extensive periods with the WWE, but he hasn't gone up to a real challenge where someone's been matching his physicality for a long period of time. We haven't seen that from him yet. So we can't really say perseverance in the physical sense, but we can certainly say it in the mental sense, in the internal sense. Not just in terms of how much effort he puts into his training or into his career, we can certainly say that, but also his rebound game. His rebound game is strong. How many times has his career looked as though it's done, and he's come back even stronger? We've had the... Well, let's be honest here, we've had the prankster, awful Logan Paul, we've had the bearded Logan Paul post-Japan, we've had that, and now we've got the WWE Logan Paul with Prime, and yet he's come back stronger and stronger each time. And an animal that does that perseveres, that powers through physical toil, and yet keeps going and comes back stronger, or at least comes back meaner, is the animal I think would pair really well with Logan Paul, with his personality and with his physical traits. The boar. And you might be saying, a boar? Come on, like Pumbaa? You kidding me? But actually, Pumbaa was a warthog, not a boar. But the boar was a very significant symbol during medieval times. Knights would frequently have that as their coat of arms because it was again a symbol of perseverance and resilience. Logan certainly has the physicality of the boar. He has that overpowering quality. He certainly knows how to use his muscle, as illustrated by his wrestling background and also illustrated in his fight against Floyd Mayweather. But what he needs as well is that sharpness, because boars after all have their tusks as well to gore on their opponents. So he needs that sharpness to his technique as well. He's got that orthodox style in terms of boxing, and as he is moving into the October Misfits boxing card, this is something where he needs to pay attention now. If he goes in, certainly he can go in orthodox, and he can go in with his muscle. But if he's going up against someone who again has that experience, then that's probably not going to do much for him, because size doesn't do much when you have experience on your side. So what I would recommend is that instead of using his own weight or his own muscle to overpower his opponent, I would instead suggest taking that mass that he has, right? We've got Logan Paul here, got an opponent here, taking that mass that he sends to his opponent, but you've also got that energy in turn going from the opponent to Logan and using that against the opponent. Using the energy that the opponent gives him against the opponent. Or in simpler terms, just using their own momentum against them. One example is the Muhammad Ali technique of the rope-a-dope. Just an excellent way to maintain evasion, maintain guard, but also make certain that your opponent loses their own energy. Loses their own momentum, so that you can then come in with your own power in turn. So in conclusion, Logan Paul. Next up we have the songbird herself, Talia Mar. Or is it Talia Minter? Or Talia Haddock? So what does she have? Well, she does have a gymnastics background. We can rule that in. And with that comes not only acrobatic ability, but also comes evasive ability. You're meant to be more light on your feet or have a bit more sharpness in your movements to quickly change stances, change positions, be able to change the weight positioning in your body. Now she does have a small stature, and last I checked she's not exactly roiding, but that can be played to an advantage. So what would suit Talia would be more likely to be a more evasive style, not really tanking punches or tanking techniques, but instead being more evasive and avoiding being hit. And maybe even avoiding going in for long stretches of techniques as well, or hand-to-hand, or anything like that, avoiding that. It would instead perhaps be wiser, especially with a larger opponent, to get in close, to avoid those techniques, get in close, and come in with the critical strike. Maybe just one punch is all that's necessary. One punch woman. But let's also take her characteristics into account, because that does matter. One thing is, she's got a singing voice, certainly, she's a singer. But she also has the habit of singing to herself. What we're looking at is probably something that's more likely to be, say, a songbird, as we've said. So a small songbird, that's what we're looking at. But we're also looking at something she has in buckets. Empathetic. Her empathic senses are certainly strong. It doesn't really factor in at all or anything, but it's impactful. In fact, do we know if she is actually crying right now? So bearing all of that in mind, what would fit her? I would say that she would be on, that her animal spirit is that of a sparrow.
Alas, my children, this is the day you shall always remember as the day that you almost... Captain Jack Sparrow.
And sparrows are a very quick bird. They don't exactly fly for long stretches of time. They are they are in midair for shorter periods of time, but during that time, they're known to dart and change direction very quickly. So, what I would recommend would be a style more akin to Bar Zhang. A style that's more evasive, getting in close and coming in with the critical strikes. Perhaps it is just the one or two important techniques to key areas of the body, to the throat, and to the softer areas, would be all that would be necessary. Next up, we have the host of the Daily Wire's comment section, and someone that's been phrased as news mummy, less said the better, Brett Cooper. No, not the UFC fighter. Now, she's been a hard nut to crack, I will say. So what is the first trait which I think we can harbour in? Well, she does have already existing self-defense training. We can harbour that in, as well as a ballet background. So she certainly has a veritable history of physical movement. So certainly that won't be a problem. So I'm expecting there will be more of an orthodox approach in terms of her training methods. Perhaps more of a reliance on more direct movements. Perhaps more of a use of quick and effective techniques would be to her advantage. But what are her physical traits? Well, one is, did I spell that right? Studious. Certainly more of an analytical frame of mind, and that is always important, because if you can have more of that analytical approach, especially in a combat situation, and you are able to remain calm at the same time, you'll be able to point out more weaknesses in, say, your opponent's stance, more weaknesses in terms of their physicality. In short, you'll be able to study your opponent at the same time as you fight them. And if you're able to do this subconsciously, unconsciously, you're already in a much better position. Because if you're just going off all emotion, well then, that's not going to help anyone. The independence is a notable trait, so I've noted it down, but I don't think it's very relevant. What is more relevant is the courage. Now, some people would paint her as more of a Ravenclaw, but I'd say she fits the Gryffindor more so. There's a notable story which I remember her telling of when she was coming out as conservative, or more conservatively minded, more right-wing minded, to her peers, especially to her friends, and she was still willing to do so, even though they were more liberal-minded and perhaps and ostracised her for her beliefs, but she kept to her guns. After all, as said by Professor Dumbledore,
it takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends.
And the fact that she has continued to the point of being able to make a career out of this showcases the courage of her character. So with all of this in mind, the animal style which I think would impact upon her the greatest, or help her to get up to her full potential, would be... I mean, it just makes sense, she's a horse girl after all. And finally we have Mr. So-and-so himself, the self-proclaimed nightmare, knowledge, strength and integrity himself, JJ Olatunji. Well, yes, I am aware that knowledge, strength and integrity are not on the board. So something we can already take a note of is that he has displayed more of a karate-like stance in his most recent boxing matches, and karate elbows. Now this stance, it works in its own ways, but I'm not really as inclined to use it myself. Maybe just temporarily, but not throughout a fight. As for one thing, such a style can... well, frankly, it can bring about more of a frenzy in the mind, I've found. Sometimes it is better to remain calm on the outside, so it's better to become calm on the inside. Now, his overhead is one of his signature movements, and he uses it in quite an unorthodox way. He uses it sort of like in a very, well, whipping motion, but also uses it at an unorthodox angle, making it so that it often will either strike his opponent on the back of the head, which is not very legal, but also comes at an angle which they're not trained to really counter. His ambition and drive are to be noted greatly, especially due to just how he has invigorated himself to the top of the scene of YouTube boxing. How many times has he announced as an opponent and people have said, oh, he's going to lose, oh, he's not ready for this challenge, and then he has proven people wrong. He certainly has the drive to prove people wrong, let's say that, and to prove to himself that he can overcome such challenges, which again feeds into his ambition. I mean, how many businesses does this man have now? Goodness me. It's safe to say he will retire a very rich man, so long as he does not, you know, invest in any more crypto. Overall, the man is a textbook Slytherin, so it kind of makes sense what I'm going to say his animal spirit will be. Who saw that coming? Not me.
a snake! Ironic.
Okay, yes, it's kind of obvious, but when something is obvious, it's probably because it's hitting upon a truth. So I would say that with his next upcoming fight against Tommy Fury, doing all of what he has been doing so far, it could work, but he needs to come out of the gate as well with something new, because he's going up against someone with a lot more experience. And experience, well, that does a lot. So something that JJ needs to do now is employ a bit of something new. And something I will say probably would help is not just the sharpness of movements that snakes have. This, I badly draw a snake. Not just that sharply whipping movement, which is often a defensive movement as well, to draw people back, to scare away potential predators. It's more serious when they really if they really start to lunge down here and then leap up sharply. That's the real problem here. I think if JJ employs something similar as well, so instead of keeping to his constant, if he keeps to his continual rocking and backwards and forwards, like so, it will work, but it won't work forever. So instead, comes in low, lowers his stance, and then sharply edges out for a sharp and very quick head strike. If he's able to pull it off succinctly, if he's able to pull it off correctly, then it'll be able to disorientate his opponent, and then perhaps he can also come in then for the big overhand as the big number two. But what can he do aside from this? But snakes, especially larger snakes, also have their coiling power, because the snake's body, it's all muscle, so they're able to coil and wrap the body around their opponent. Now, coiling with the arms or something, or grabbing someone's arm or or grabbing around their head, you can't do that in boxing. So what can he do instead? He can instead do this with footwork. He could, put simply, corner the opponent. Put his opponent in the corner, barrage them with strikes, and then by the time the opponent is out of the corner, even if they've survived, they will have taken that physical punishment to the arms, to the body. It will have added up some damage, so that at least then, then he goes to his own corner after that, then at least JJ has put in some damage going forwards. Or, you know, he could always just hit someone with the elbow again and pass it off as a mistake. No contest. That works too. But with that being said, how close are we to putting together a succinct plan for any of these people that I've put together here? Do you think any of them will even be my students by seeing this video? I highly doubt it. So until next time everyone, thank you all for watching and peace be with you.